Hey guys, my name's Cass and I like to read books and I want to talk about them, so that's what we're going to do. No one asked for this, no one wants this, but I figured I'd give it a go. And I was going to start out with the booktube newbie tag, but to be honest with you, I don't really like the questions in that one. I think they're kind of boring and I didn't feel like answering them, so we're just gonna go right into the end of the year book tag because it's November 8th and we are quickly approaching the end of the year. But I figured since I've never done this before, I would give a little overview of my Storygraph stats for the year so far. So I've read 98 books this year. Don't know how that happened. Last year, I think I got to 90 books at the end of November, and I read 100 in total. So we've picked up speed just a little bit. But my top moods are reflective, emotional, and challenging. And Storygraph says that I typically choose medium-paced books that are less than 300 pages long, which sounds about right. And my top 3 genres are literary fiction, memoir, and essays. And the split so far has been 60% fiction and 40% nonfiction, which is cool because I've been reading a lot more essays and memoirs and really enjoying them. So the first question is, are there any books that you started this year that you need to finish? My first answer is The Prime of Life by Simone de Beauvoir. I plan on finishing this by the end of November. I've been reading like 20 pages before I go to bed each night because it's 600 pages long, so I should be finished with it before the month ends. But I read her first memoir, Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter, over the summer. It was about her childhood. At the beginning of this one, she is 21 years old. She's living on her own, and I've really been enjoying it so far. There's a lot of like historical and cultural references that I'm not fully familiar with, but I find that I can still kind of navigate through the book even without having all of those touch points. So I've been enjoying this so far. I've also been reading The Chandelier by Clarice Lispector. I'm about I think a quarter of the way through that. I have it on loan from Libby, so I'm reading that digitally, but that's due in like 2 weeks, so hopefully I'll finish that within the next couple days here. I also have a couple books that I have started this year, and I don't really plan on finishing them before the end of this year. I'm not DNFing them, but I'm just not really prioritizing them right now. The first book that I started in 2023 but don't plan on finishing this year is The Complete Stories of Clarice Lispector. I love her writing. I've read An Apprenticeship or The Book of Pleasures, Agua Viva, The Hour of the Star. Like I said, I'm working on The Chandelier right now, but I'm just not a huge short story girl. I got like 130 pages into this, I think back over the summer, and just kind of told myself that I would pick it up and haven't since then. So yeah, I'd rather kind of prioritize her longer works now. But if we are talking like a bigger volume of her work, I definitely want to pick up her Too Much of Life, which is like the series of like columns that she wrote for a Brazilian newspaper. Just because I really prefer essays over short stories. I think that I would really enjoy that one. And the other one that I started this year but probably will not finish is 3 by Annie Dillard. This has Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, An American Childhood, and The Writing Life in it. And I started Pilgrim at Tinker Creek and got maybe 60 pages into it. It's not bad. I thought it would be kind of a good like fall book because it's really just like no plot, just nature vibes. But it didn't really hook me in. I'm thinking that An American Childhood and The Writing Life might be more up my alley, so maybe we'll get to those at some point sooner rather than later, but yeah, probably not going to finish this within the next 2 months. Question 2 is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? And I did reread The Idiot by Elif Batuman in September. This was one of the books that got me back into reading back in 2021 whenever I first read it, and I actually got to go to like a speaking event with Elif and got to meet her and got my copy of Either Or signed, which was really cool. So that made me want to reread both this and Either Or, but I didn't enjoy this as much the second time around. I think that that's on me though. I read it right after reading 7 books in like 7 days when I was on vacation, and just kind of was in a slump for the beginning part of September when I was trying to get through this. So I don't know. Didn't work as much for me, but I think that that's my fault and not the book. But this is a story about Selin, who is a freshman at Harvard, so it's kind of back to school vibes, and it's just her life. If you're on the internet, you know this book. So yeah, that was my autumnal book. Question 3 is there a new release that you're still waiting for? Not that I know of for the next 2 months. The only one that I was really kind of waiting for and anticipating was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I love Britney and her music, so I was really excited to get my hands on this whenever it came out a few weeks ago. Blew through it in like 2 days, but it is a very upsetting story of what happened to her while she was in a conservatorship with her family, and just kind of how that derailed her career and her life. So I enjoyed this as much as I could have given the circumstances, but this was the only one that I really was anticipating. I do have a couple of books that were released this year though that I really did enjoy. The first one being The Guest Lecture by Martin Riker. I found out about this from the Reading the Room podcast hosted by Jaylen. I think this was like a book club pick back in February for the pod, and I really love this one. I was kind of apprehensive because it's about a economics professor who is giving a talk on what is his name? John Maynard Keynes? I don't know. It talks a lot about different economic things, and that was not my forte. I took some economics classes in college and didn't enjoy them, so I thought that this might go over my head, but the way that the character is kind of just in her head laying in bed the night before this talk, and she kind of has this back and forth with an imaginary John Maynard Keynes going through different aspects of the speech, different aspects of her life, and it just really worked for me, that kind of format. So really enjoyed this. It came out in 2003. It came out in 2023. Another 2023 release that I really enjoyed was A Life of One's Own by Joan. This talks about 9 women writers, ways that their lives kind of came apart and how they dealt with that. The subtitle of this is 9 Women Writers Begin Again. So Biggs connects her divorce that she went through and kind of her life and how she rebuilt it with the lives and the work of Mary Wollstonecraft, George Eliot, Zora Neale Hurston, Virginia Woolf, Simone de Beauvoir, Sylvia Plath, Toni Morrison, and Elena Ferrante. So I've read books from everyone on this list except for the first 3, Mary, George, and Zora, but I've loved all of the other 6 authors that are discussed here. So if you're interested in those writers or nonfiction, essay collections, marriage, things like that, this was a really good one that came out this year. And the last 2023 release that I wanted to talk about that I really enjoyed was Where Are Your Boys Tonight by Chris Payne. This is maybe kind of a niche book. It talks about the emo music scene from 1999 to 2008. And if you know me, you know that Fall Out Boy and Paramore are my 2 favorite bands of all time, and those 2 bands are very heavily discussed in here. This is my friend Claire's copy, so it's very heavily annotated, but the style of this book is really interesting. It's an oral history the way that he did it was really interesting, like weaving in his conversations with different people that were in the music scene, whether it's members of bands or people from like record labels or just people that were around during this time in music. And I just really enjoyed reading about a topic that I'm passionate about, and just very nostalgic and interesting and funny at times too. And just to touch on some 2024 releases real quick that I'm looking forward to, since I don't really have any that I'm looking forward to for the end of the year. Alphabetical Diaries by Sheila Heti. I haven't read any Sheila Heti yet, but I do plan on it before the end of this year. The way that it's set up with her diary entries being alphabetical, I don't know, it just is speaking to me. I think it's going to be very interesting. And then the other book that I'm looking forward to in 2024 is Parade by Rachel Cusk. Big Cusk head here. She's one of my favorite authors, so I'm excited to have some new work from her next year. Next question is there a book that you think might shock you and become a favorite this year still? One of the ones that I'm thinking is a contender to be a 5-star read is Hot Milk by Deborah Levy. I read her novel Swimming Home over the summer, and that was a 5-star. And I've also read her 3 living autobiographies. I don't think that I gave any of those 5 stars, but I really enjoyed just her voice in all of those. So I am thinking her fiction worked for me. I know she's kind of a bit polarizing. I see a lot of people that especially didn't like her new book August Blue, but I don't know. I think it's gonna be good. I think it'll work. Another one that I think is a contender to be a favorite is My Work by Olga Ravin. I have not read The Employees yet, but I know I see rave reviews of it online. Just hasn't really appealed to me yet so far, but I'm hoping that this book is going to be what I wanted The Golden Notebook by Doris Lessing to be for me. I read that last month and enjoyed it to an extent, but it didn't hit the way that I wanted it to. But this is a book that deals with motherhood, and it combines a lot of different forms. I know there's like some poetry and like essays, memoir, different styles of writing in here that I think will be interesting. It also seems very auto-fictional, so that's another thing that I love. Last 5-star contender that I have is Slouching Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion. I haven't read a Didion since I finished Blue Nights back in July. I loved that one. I also read the White Album back in February or January, but that one didn't really do it for me. I think I'm deeper into my love of essays now, so I think that this one is going to be really good because I really enjoy her work. And this was her first essay collection, and I feel like it's kind of the most popular, most famous one, so I think that this will be a hit for me as well. One of the questions is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? I did something a little bit different for me. I had a pile of books on this little cart that just initially started as like summer reading and then turned into fall reading, and I realized last week that we only have 2 months left in the year. So I went through that pile and went through my TBR shelf and came up with some TBR lists, one for November and one for December. So far in November, I've finished I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. I listened to the audiobook of Minor Detail by Adanya Shibley, and then I just finished The Leaving Season by Kelly McMasters. And then I also have actually all three of the last books that I talked about on my November list as well. My Work, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, and then Hot Milk I plan on reading on Scribd. I also want to get to The Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. I've read Jane, about her aunt, and enjoyed that one. This one intimidates me just a little bit, but I plan on picking it up after I finish the chandelier, and I don't know, it's slim. I took a look at the first couple pages and I think it'll be good. Excited to finally get to this. I feel like it's a very iconic book. And then the other one is The Easy Life by Marguerite Duras. Picked this one up kind of on a whim. I haven't read any of her work yet. I do have The Lovers and The War on my TBR shelf from her. This one sounded interesting, kind of DWM vibes, so we'll see how I enjoy it. For December, I have quite a few books that I would like to get to before the year ends. One of those being A Frozen Woman by Annie Ernaux. I've read a bunch of the Fitzcarraldo editions of her books over the past year or so, and have mostly really enjoyed them, and just kind of making my way through her catalog, whatever strikes my fancy. So this one is on the list. I'd also like to get to Motherhood by Sheila Heti in December. Like I said, really looking forward to Alphabetical Diaries, and this one was recommended as a good place to start with Heti by Jaylen from The Bar and the Bookcase. So Pure Color seems a bit too out there for me. I don't know if I would like that, but this one and How Should a Person Be do sound like books that I would really enjoy. So we're gonna try it out. We also have On Women by Susan Sontag. I have not read much of Sontag's. I was checking my shelves to see. The only Sontag that I've read so far is the first volume of her journals, called Reborn. It was like the second book that I read this year, and I loved it, but I haven't read any of like her criticism or anything like that, so looking forward to this. Also, this cover, it's really good. Also got The Unicorn by Iris Murdoch. I've not read any Murdoch so far. I do have a couple of her books on my TBR shelf, just off screen here, but this one got it at Half Price Books, and I've heard great things about her. I know she has a lot of books. I did read her husband's like biography of her, talking about like their relationship and stuff like that, and thought that was interesting. So this one's a nice short one. I was considering starting with The Sea, but it's a chunky one and I don't know if I'm ready for that, so we're gonna try this. Next up for December is Amrita by Banana Yoshimoto. I read her short story collection Lizard last year, I think. Yeah, and it was fine. I am really interested to read more of her work, but this is about an actress that suddenly dies, and then is kind of the story of her sister that has memory loss after an accident. It says Grief, Dreams, and Shadows, and I don't know, it's a bit of a chunky one, but I've had it for probably over a year and have been meaning to get to it. We have a couple more for December. One of them being The Right to Sex by Amiya Srinivasan. Essay collection, heard great things about it, talks about feminism. Just seems like it's gonna be right up my alley. I also really like this cover. I think that I first heard about this from, once again, Jaylen, The Bar and the Bookcase. He really enjoyed it, so picked this up when I was on vacation this year and looking forward to it. Finally, on the TBR for December, we've got Year of the Monkey by Patti Smith. This was another one that I picked up when I was on vacation in North Carolina this year, and I want this, if I time things correctly, I want this to be the last book that I read in 2023, because it seems like it kind of, I think it starts, yeah, it starts after a like New Year's concert that Patti Smith put on. So I don't know, it just feels kind of symbolic to end the year with it and go into 2024. After reading this, I have read Just Kids and M Train by Patti Smith. I like both of those. I want to read more of her work. And then the last question is, have you already started making reading plans for 2024? I haven't made any super like set in stone plans. If the monthly TBR thing works out for me for November and December, I might continue to do that. I have a shelf full of unread books that I've been collecting, and I would really like to work through a lot of those. So I think kind of making a list at the beginning of each month and prioritizing those books and kind of setting them aside, taking them off the shelf might be helpful in getting through a lot of these. I always say that I want to buy less books, but that usually does not end up happening. So I think just kind of being reasonable with the amount of books that I'm bringing in is also a plan and a goal. I want to use my library more often too and kind of get better at managing my holds. I feel like I will request a bunch of books one month from the library and read all of those, and then I won't use it again for like 3 months. So I kind of go in cycles with it, but I want to get better at planning that out and just taking advantage of that as a resource. And then just really working through the works of authors that I've read a lot from. Rachel Cusk, Joan Didion, Annie Ernaux are like the top 3 that I can think of that I have a bunch of their books on my shelf ready to go. They're, I think, my 3 most read authors besides Ottessa Moshfegh, but I've read all of Ottessa's stuff. So just keep working through those catalogs since I know that I really enjoy those authors. Okay, that's it. Those are all the questions for the end of the year book tag. No one tagged me in this. I'm not gonna tag anyone either. I don't know if anyone's even gonna see this, so we're just gonna roll with it. But yeah, talk to you guys later, maybe.